It was a cold and relentless night in a quiet Seattle suburb. Rain fell in thick sheets, soaking the streets, battering rooftops, and fogging up the windows of every home. The streetlights flickered faintly through the downpour, and most people had already taken refuge indoors, shielding themselves from the storm. Inside one modest two-story house at the end of the lane, a man named James was preparing dinner. The kitchen was warm, filled with the scent of roasted vegetables and grilled chicken. On a small table near the living room, his 6-year-old daughter Lily sat with crayons in her hand, humming softly as she colored in her favorite book. James, in his mid-30s, had grown used to quiet evenings like this. After losing his wife to cancer 2 years ago, his world had changed drastically. Where there had once been two parents sharing responsibilities and memories, now there was just him and Lily, father and daughter trying to navigate a world that often felt too big and too lonely. Though grief still lingered in the corners of his heart, James had devoted himself entirely to raising Lily with love, care, and quiet strength. As he stirred the pot and glanced at the clock, the doorbell suddenly rang. It was sharp and unexpected, slicing through the soft sound of rain like a warning bell. James frowned slightly, drying his hands with a towel. It was unusual for anyone to be visiting in such weather, especially at this hour. He made his way to the front door, unlocked it, and pulled it open. Standing there, in the cold and driving rain, was a teenage girl. She looked no older than 17. Her clothes were drenched, clinging to her trembling frame. Long, wet strands of dark hair stuck to her pale face, and her eyes, wide, terrified, and glassy, met James's for just a second before she stumbled forward and wrapped her arms around him. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice cracked and barely audible. For a moment, James stood frozen, stunned by her sudden embrace. Then instinct kicked in. He wrapped his arms around her gently, holding her upright as she nearly collapsed in his arms. Hey, it's okay. Come inside. You're safe now," he said softly. He helped her through the doorway, closed the door against the wind, and turned to find Lily watching silently from behind the hallway wall. Her eyes were wide, curious, and unsure. James gave her a small reassuring nod before guiding the girl toward the couch. She was shaking, not only from the cold, but from something deeper. Something that had been haunting her long before she stepped out into the rain. He grabbed a blanket from the nearby closet and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his voice calm and soothing. "Emily," she said after a moment, her lips barely moving. "Okay, Emily, you're safe here, all right. No one's going to hurt you. Can you tell me what happened?" Emily looked down at her soaked hands, her fingers trembling. She was silent for a while. The only sound was the ticking of the clock and the steady hum of the rain. Then slowly, as if forcing herself to speak through fear, she began. "I ran away. I couldn't take it anymore. The place I was staying, it wasn't safe. It hasn't been safe for years. I've been in and out of foster homes since I was 10. Each one worse than the last. They either didn't care, or they pretended to care and then turned cruel." James sat nearby, listening, giving her space but showing her that he was there, fully present. "I didn't know where to go tonight," she continued. "I just kept walking. I didn't have a plan. I was wet, cold, and scared. Then I saw your porch light, and I hoped someone kind lived here." James felt a lump in his throat. This girl, barely old enough to drive, had faced more pain than most adults ever would. He didn't know all the details, but he didn't need to, not yet. He just knew she needed help, warmth, and a sense of safety. That much was clear. He stood up and went to the kitchen, making her a cup of hot tea. Then he handed her one of Lily's old hoodies to change into. Emily disappeared into the bathroom, changed out of her wet clothes, and returned wearing the oversized hoodie, her hair still damp but now towel-dried. Her eyes were still wary, her posture defensive, like she expected to be told to leave at any moment. But that moment never came. Lily, holding her favorite stuffed unicorn, walked up to Emily without hesitation. "You can have this," she said shyly. "It helps me when I'm scared." Emily looked down at the soft toy, then up at the little girl offering it with such innocent kindness. Her lips quivered, and tears began to pool in her eyes again, but this time, not just from fear. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the unicorn tightly. James picked up his phone and called a local social worker. He explained the situation carefully, not to report Emily, but to find her a temporary safe place while things could be figured out. He knew the system was complicated, and he didn't want her lost in it again. The social worker arrived later that night, a kind woman named Maria who listened attentively and treated Emily with compassion. She promised to place her in a better situation, somewhere she would be cared for. But something had shifted inside James that night. Emily wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was someone who had come to his door for a reason, and he couldn't ignore that. In the days that followed, James checked on her regularly. He brought her books, clean clothes, snacks, and notes from Lily. He invited her over for dinner a few times. Slowly, Emily began to change. The dark shadows in her eyes began to fade. She started to talk more, laugh occasionally, and play board games with Lily on weekend afternoons. She told James one day, quietly over dinner, "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't opened the door." James smiled gently and said, "Some doors are meant to be opened." Emily wasn't his daughter by blood, but something powerful had happened the night she arrived, something unspoken but undeniable. In a city full of locked hearts and closed doors, a frightened girl had found warmth, care, and love where she least expected it. And in return, James and Lily had found something too. Family, rebuilt not by blood, but by choice, compassion, and a single moment of courage on a rainy night.